Hoop City with Paul Sir on Sports 1440.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry! We did it!
Here's your host, Paul Sir.
Good morning and welcome to Hoop City with Paul Sir, along with the great Josh Fenwick. Josh, it's good to have you here today.
It's good to be here, Paul. Happy to see you again.
Well, it's great to see you too. I'm glad you're feeling better. Last week you were just coming out of a bout with whatever the alien of the week was that was floating around and getting into folks' systems. So it's good to see you feeling great again.
Yeah, feeling good and still crushing tea left and right. So
that's good man. Taking care of yourself. It's going to be a great show today. We're going to switch things up in terms of the order in how we do things. Instead of in the second hour when we generally do our deep dive segment. And for those who are first-time listeners or haven't heard us that much, the deep dive really is where we go into the weeds on the sport of basketball. Oftentimes I feel, and this is on a personal level, I feel unsatisfied, dissatisfied, Josh. I'm not sure which. I think it's dissatisfied is the proper use of the word. But I get frustrated at the fact that we really don't get into the weeds, into the discussion of what the nuances might be of a particular team, of a particular game, particular player, whatever it might be. But I'm really excited about our guest today. We've had Pat Boylan on many, many times. Pat is the radio play-by-play voice, longtime radio play-by-play voice of the Indiana Pacers and the WNBA's Caitlin Clark-led Indiana Fever. So we're able to talk both about not just the Pacers, but the NBA in general. And remember with the Pacers, I mean, they're 15-45. It's not like we're looking at them as a way to gauge the playoffs coming up, but what we're looking at is a team that got unexpectedly, surprisingly, to Game 7 in the NBA Finals last year. Of course, their great point guard, Tyrese Halliburton, went down in Game 6 with an Achilles rupture. He's rehabbing on his way back. They just picked up a great center from Chicago in Zubac. He'll be ready for next year, and all things considered, they may end up with a top 4 or 5 pick in a very deep draft this year. So they might be long-suffering this year, but Pat really goes into what it's like in Indianapolis right now. But also we talk, of course, about the NBA and the WNBA negotiations, which right now still are not resolved, pose a bit of a threat to the start of the season and maybe to the season itself if things go off the rail. But it'll be a great conversation. Then in the second hour, our community champion is my son, Steve Sir. Steve's a local basketball legend. 2 high school championships at Ross Shepherd before he went down for his grade 12 years at Cretin-Derham Hall High School in St. Paul. Still holds the 3-point record for a season. And I think, Josh, this is what's interesting. Steve's numbers in terms of 3 points made in his 1 year at Cretin-Derham Hall are 44 more than the second place guy all these years later, 25 years later. So, I mean, Steve at an era when the three wasn't shot as much as it is today was really lighting it up. Also holds the NCAA record for 3-point percentage in a career for players who made over 300 three-pointers in their Division I career. Is now presently the national team coach for the country of Mongolia, a rising 3x3 powerhouse. Steve's been Canada's number 1 3x3 player for a long time. And so we're going to talk about Steve. He's getting ready to head back over to Mongolia to coach their national teams. We'll talk 3x3, but we'll also talk the state of college basketball, the changes going on, the drafts, the NBA, etc. So, Josh, why don't we start out with our poll question today? I kind of like this question.
So, poll question today is, who would you like to start your team with? Victor Wembanyama, Con Knipple, Cooper Flagg, or Anthony Edwards? You can vote on that on our Twitter at Hoop City Show on X, the Everything app. It's all happening on X.
All happening on X. And what I like about this question is the variety of players, because you've got the 2 outstanding rookies, Cooper Flagg, who everybody thought was going to be a generational player, and the trend certainly was heading in that direction prior to his injury, but he should be back, I guess, relatively soon. Surprising success of Con Kneppel, who, if you had to pick today, he probably would be the Rookie of the Year. Incredible year. Just broke the three-pointers made for a rookie already with many, many games to go. Having an outstanding year, and is one of the major reasons why the Charlotte Hornets, a doormat of an NBA franchise, not only are they relevant, they're winning a lot of games and they're beating a lot of good teams, not just the weak sisters in the league, but they're beating a lot of good teams as well. So Con Kneppel's interesting. Ant, I think, has the sizzle. He has the appeal factor, the eye appeal factor. He's a spectacular player, a spectacular talent, a bit on the volatile side, still rounding out in terms of his maturity in Minnesota, but really probably the most dynamic player, I would say, in the league, in a league filled with dynamic players. And then, of course, Victor Wembanyama. 7'5", all of those skills, can spot up from three, and not just a three, a deep three, in transition, back to the basket game. And he primarily is responsible for the San Antonio Spurs being a genuine title contender this year. So on one hand, Josh, I think the obvious pick is Wemby, obviously. But when you look at the skill sets of the other three players, can you take what they bring and their versatility, or do you go with Wembanyama as just the obvious one because 7'5", athletic, can handle the ball, can shoot the three, like I mentioned? But I think it's a bit of I think it's an interesting conversation. Who would you pick?
For me, I'm taking the obvious one. I'm taking Victor Wembanyama, and I love the other guy. Anthony Edwards is close. This is a guy who's gone to 2 Western Conference Finals and has been the 1-1 for sure. But we're talking about an alien right now. That's the comparison, is a guy who can literally do it all for you. And so, to me, Ant's still pretty young, but Wemby is younger, and also he competes at everything. He's the guy that said, I'm competing at the All-Star game. I don't care about everyone else, but I'm playing hard. And so I think that's a guy that you want on your team. Not saying that Ant isn't that guy, because I think he's also just a psycho competitor, but it's hard to pass up on the 7'4" guy who can bang home 3-pointers.
He may have single-handedly transformed the All-Star game back into relevance because of his competitive nature and the way that carried over, not just to his teammates on the international team, but also to the American players who went out there with, very, very focused in the 2 games that they played against each other. And they competed hard as well because they didn't want Wemby, who was out there battling, to take that away from them. So I agree with you. Wemby is just so hard to argue with. I do think, though, for me, being the devil's advocate here, I would look at Cooper Flagg and say, I might go with Flagg. Because of his versatility, he can guard all 5 positions. And this is a 19-year-old. This is a guy who, by the time he's done, really could transform and redefine how good a player can be in all aspects of the game. Because I think one of the areas of his game, Josh, that is often overlooked is his defense. And he passes the ball really well. He has a lot of LeBron in him in terms of making the right pass at the right time. But he has and this may sound controversial because you're talking about the guy who scored more points by a long shot than anybody else in LeBron James. And we all know how great he is. But I think Cooper Flagg is potentially going to be a better all-around player because I think he's a more versatile scorer than LeBron James is. And with all due respect to LeBron, Cooper's going to shoot the 3 better than LeBron. He can put it on the deck, both hands, really well as LeBron. He will become as good as LeBron. But the nuance to his game, I think, is really special, and I think he has a chance to be an NBA All-Defensive player as well. So please text in your answer. We're looking forward to seeing what you think. I'm guessing it'll heavily favor Wemby, but I'm hoping some other people might consider taking an alternative way to go. By the way, you can text us as 833-401-1440, 833-401-1440. If you have any comments, questions, anything you'd like to hear talked about on the show today. So, like I said, we have Pat Boylan coming up in the second segment today, Steve at the top of the hour. So I'm going to do a game summary, and I'm going to get your opinion on some of these. The other night, Josh, you've been really busy, and I'm assuming you're watching hockey, but I watched Houston and Orlando play. Kevin Durant had 40 points. He moved into sixth place all time in terms of total points in the highest stratosphere of company with, of course, LeBron, Kareem, Malone, Jordan, and Kobe, I think, are the five in front of him. And Durant looked great. And this is what's surprising to me, Josh. Houston, who I think a lot of people were starting to give up on because of the problems that they've had with Van Fleet being out at point guard, not being able to really address that comfortably through the early part of the season. But what was making them as tough as they were was the rebounding prowess of Steven Adams, the New Zealander, who was absolutely shattering records on offensive rebounds and keeping the ball alive, grabbing offensive rebounds, kicking them out for threes. And their offensive rebound rate was at historic levels, but he, unfortunately, is out for the season. But now they seem to be rounding themselves back into shape. Sengun in the center is playing really, really well. But it's been I think, the emergence of two players. Amen Thompson, who's a phenomenal defender, one of the great athletes. He and his twin brother in Detroit. Two of the great athletes in a very athletic league. But it's also been the emergence of Reed Sheppard as a point guard. For people who don't know who Reed Sheppard is, probably 6'1", from Kentucky, but can really shoot the ball. Coach's son, shows up in how he plays, but he is becoming more and more consistent. And the other night in their victory over Orlando, in Orlando, Sheppard had 28. A lot of 20-point games, a lot of 15 to 20-point games. Ball handling, low turnovers, high assist rates. But he has really emerged. What are your thoughts on Houston, Josh?
Yeah, I'm very impressed with the emergence of Reed Sheppard. I think that was the big question coming into the season, especially with Fred VanVleet going out. I remember having the conversation of, okay, well, Reed Sheppard's their point guard now. Like really? Like, this is the guy that they have? And it was really the only choice that they had. And he's really come into his own recently. I think I still have some issues on the rebounding front because Steven Adams, it's not just historically, he wasn't just like historically good this year. He's basically been historically good his entire career.
Absolutely.
Right? And so
you don't replace that.
Yeah. And so that's incredibly difficult to replace, especially because rebounding is such an important part of the game. And the only other thing that I have problems with Houston with is their fourth quarters where they're very overly reliant on Kevin Durant.
Absolutely.
They basically just stop and go, all right, well, Kevin, this is what we got you for. Please go out and help us win. We're in the weeds here. This is all you now. So they need to find a more like team-oriented way to finish out games. And Ime Udoka is a very good coach. He should be able to figure this out. So, but other than that, like they're a really, really good team. There's a reason they were the second seed last year. But yeah, like would I say they're competing for a championship or anything? No. I just don't see them in that level of competitor right now because the top end of the West is so good.
Well stated, and I would agree with you to a large extent. Here's the one thing that is changing, though, that I think is really interesting. Kevin Durant really buys into Reed Sheppard. He really likes what Sheppard brings to this team, and when you get that kind of endorsement from KD. And I think what's starting to happen is KD is willing to pass out of pressure to Sheppard because he trusts Sheppard's ability to shoot the ball so well. And I think that adds a dimension. You though, made the key point. Without Adams, and it was real interesting watching Şengün and Adams playing together because you got two bigs out there, which of course really bucks the trend in the NBA. But, trends are made to be broken. So they miss Adams, but the emergence of Shepherd, the solidifying some of the other players, and KD right now he's at a really good place. He looks very fluid, very smooth. He still can get pretty much any shot he wants anytime he wants, unless people are running two at him. And that's where I go to my point, and to your point, the fact that he trusts Shepherd, now you can see that he's looking for Shepherd. So it's going to be interesting. But you made a great point, though, about hanging on to the ball too long in the fourth quarter, and that'll segue into my next game that I'll focus on, and that was the Wolves and the Clippers the other night. The Clippers are a fun story because I continually joke about, can you name three players on the Clippers that aren't Kawhi Leonard? And it's really hard. But the other night, the Clippers gave the Wolves everything that they could handle. And in the fourth quarter, Anthony Edwards put on a show, including the shot that solidified the win. Deep in the corner, two guys hanging all over him, fading away, nails the bottom of the net. And here's my problem, and this is, I look forward to your opinion on this, Josh. I love Ant, but I don't love how Minnesota plays yet because he is like Luka used to be. Luka actually shares the ball more than Ant does now, I think. Ant is taking 20, 22 seconds of dribbling the basketball with everybody else standing around, and he's such a spectacular athlete that he can hit a shot like he hit the other night. But the problem will be when you get to the playoffs, that's all going to change. And he's going to have to become less of a ball-dominant guard and more of a sharing the ball and being more strategic in how he attacks. And I think when we had Alan Horton, the play-by-play voice of the Timberwolves, on recently, he indicated that concern as well. What are your thoughts on that? Like, Ant is spectacular, no doubt about it. But you can't have a one-man band all the time in the fourth quarter, to your point about Durant, without a player willing to share the ball. Right now, I don't see Ant's willingness to share the ball in clutch situations.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah.
There's a reason that Kobe Bryant didn't win championships without Derek Fisher. I know, Pau Gasol and Shaquille O'Neal were very important pieces or obviously the most important pieces to his success. But Derek Fisher was also on all the teams for all 5 of Kobe's rings, I believe. And that was a ball-sharing guard because Kobe didn't do it. This is a guy that averaged 25, 5, and 5 for his career. Just with the way that the NBA is now, everyone's so skilled. Everyone's able to make these shots. Not everyone, but
more people are making a wider variety of shots.
More people are able to make the shots skill-wise. It's whether or not they're mentally able to do it. But, there's a reason that, Jordan passed the ball to Paxson and he passed the ball to Kerr, and Derek Fisher was able to get the ball in places to people, and Meta World Peace or Meta World Artest or whatever his name is now made shots in big moments. It's because you have to be willing to trust the guys that you're going to war with to win. And once Ant figures that out, we're not going to be talking about him being a 2-time conference finalist. We're going to talk about him being a finalist and being in the biggest moments of the biggest moments, because he'll trust guys like Bones Highland, not just Julius Randle.
Well, and Randall's been struggling of late. McDaniels has really come on and is playing extremely well. Naz Reid continues to be solid coming off the bench. Strong case to be made for 6th man of the year. I think your points are well taken. Once there's addition by subtraction, take fewer shots, get the ball into your teammates' hands who can score, and that's going to make it easier for you to score in certain situations too, because then the team knows you're looking for open players. That makes you a better team. Before we go to break, I do want to touch on the Nuggets and Thunder last night, because I think I was real excited about this game because and even though it wasn't on TV, I was following it on social media. By the way, I have a gripe about our sports networks, and they're not reading the room with 10 channels between Sportsnet and TSN. Last weekend, they didn't have Duke, Michigan on. They didn't have Iowa State on with BYU. They didn't. And then last night, they don't have the Nuggets and the Thunder on. And the shows they had on, they weren't even NHL hockey games. They were just some terrible, terrible shows. But I don't get that. I'm grateful for the fact that we get more NBA and NCAA basketball in Canada. It's still just haphazard without rhythm, and talk about a game that should have been on. But anyway, went to overtime. Return of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, had 36. Jokic was 9 for 25. Still had 14 and 13 for rebounds and assists. Jamal Murray was the better Canadian last night. He had 39. Wasn't as efficient as Shai with his shooting percentage, but he had a marvelous game. I think we saw that the Nuggets can compete with a healthy, because the Thunder had everybody back last night, and the Nuggets, with the exception, who's the forward that's not healthy right now?
Aaron Gordon, and who's a big help and a big key instrumental piece. But I think we saw a precursor to what's going to be a very hard-fought Western Conference NBA playoff run. It's going to be so much fun, because Jokic isn't going to have a lot of 9 for 25 nights. He's still coming back and finding his rhythm. But for the Nuggets to go to OKC, take them to overtime, you see the two relatively healthy teams battling with each other, that bodes well for what will be a spectacular NBA playoffs this year. We're going to take a break right now. When we come back, over the next two segments, we're going to go into the deep dive with our good friend Pat Boylan, the play-by-play voice of the Indiana Pacers and the Indiana Fever. You're listening to Hoop City with Paul Sir, Josh Fenwick, on your sports leader, Sports 1440. Welcome to the Hoop City Deep Dive with Pat Boylan, the voice of the Indiana Pacers and the Indiana Fever. I love to welcome Pat back. I'm always excited when Pat can join us. Pat, how are you today?
Doing well. It's been a little while, so it's good to be back and chatting with you, Paul.
Likewise. Rough night last night for the Pacers, but I'll tell you what, Pat. I looked at the roster that the Pacers put on the court, and there's there's a few teams in this situation because of a variety of factors, primarily injuries. But I sometimes think an interesting game show right now would be who's on the Pacers, who's on the Clippers. Like, name 3 Pacers. You guys really have been hit hard, but how would you're 15 and 45, but the feeling I get, Pat, when I watch the Pacers play is they're playing hard. That's number one. I get a feeling from the outside looking in that the Pacer crowds are still supportive, and that it seems to come through. And I'm curious about this, is just wait, we're going to be back next year. Is there some of that, or is that the overall mentality of the Pacer fans, team, organization? Where are the Pacers at?
Yeah, I think you've mostly hit the nail on the head there. In fact, I was going to start this conversation before you even brought it up. We in Indiana, we like to think we've got a pretty high IQ level of basketball fan. We think a lot of, basketball's roots come from this area of the country and of the world. And because of that, in part because of that, but I think everybody here understands what's going on. And it's amazing, Paul. We just came off of a game on Thursday against the Charlotte Hornets, who are actually, to their credit, starting to generate some real buzz, and they've got some players that people might come out to see. But in general, you would just say the Charlotte Hornets on a Thursday night, which, by the way, is the third of 4 straight at home. Sometimes it can be tough to get people in the building when you play 4 straight home games, because families say, okay, the Pacers are in town for a week and a half. I'll go to one of those games, right? How many are going to all 4? And yet Thursday night was close to a sellout. And that's been the norm this year. And I think some of that is just the imagination that last year's team captured of the city. But also, I think it's because people understand what's happening here and are, frankly see the bigger picture, which is last year, I would argue, and I think most people would probably agree, the best year in the NBA franchise history of the Indiana Pacers. Now, they've had maybe more talented teams or teams that going into the playoffs had a better chance of winning a championship. They've had a 60-win team before. But when you just look at a game away from the NBA of an NBA championship, that has never happened before. The closest the Pacers had ever previously gotten was in 2000 when they lost to the Lakers 4-2. That was the beginning of the Kobe and Shaq dynasty. So the closest Pacer fans have ever come to tasting that NBA championship was last year. You can make a good case it was the best year in NBA franchise history. Depending on how this year goes, I mean, record-wise, it's going to be one of the very worst. And yet, look, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say the crowd level and interest and engagement equals what it did last year. It, of course, doesn't. That would be unrealistic. But I've just really been amazed at how close it's been. It has not been a significant drop-off. And even though you might go from a win away from an NBA championship to the following year winning low 20s games, we'll see where they end up. It has the ability to be, I think this is going to be a period of time when you go back and look at it 20, 30 years from now. That's fascinating because where do the Pacers go from here is such an interesting question. Tyrese Halliburton will be back, hopefully close to, if not 100%. But the potential for this franchise to add Ivica Zubac at the trade deadline and then also possibly get a top 4 pick and what appears like a loaded draft class. The last season for the Pacers could have been their best in franchise history, but there's a world, in my opinion, where this year, the challenges of this year and all the injuries of this year could actually bring about the type of movement that eventually puts this franchise over the top. I truly believe that. I mean, if you had a scenario where you brought in one of these top prospects into this team and Ivica Zubac, an upgrade at center, I mean, that's the type of scenario that I think gives goosebumps to Pacers fans. So it's this fascinating dynamic of just the horror and the tragic nature of Tyrese Halliburton's Achilles potentially costs you a championship. This year has been no fun from a wins and loss and injury perspective, but I think most fans look at it and say, well, you were able to get Ivica Zubac because of this year, because the big thing that got that trade moving was the potential for the Clippers to get a high draft pick, that if the Pacers win 40 games this year, that trade probably doesn't happen, but also the potential to get one of these top players in the draft. And what that could mean could be equally, if not even maybe more impactful than, what last season was, if they're able to turn that into future playoff wins. So I really think that this is one of the most interesting times in the history of this franchise, and it'll be fascinating when we're talking in 5 years, 10 years to see what came of all of this, because I think it has the potential to be kind of the impetus of something really special here, but we'll have to see.
Very well put. And it's interesting how the negative is actually potentially a positive, and not just in a little way, but in a very big way. Zubac, as you mentioned, huge upgrade over Turner. Nothing against Miles. He gave a lot of years to your franchise, but the potential for Zubac to be that kind of post that you've been looking for a long time is great. Tyrese, of course, being back. But I'd like to jump over to the rookie potential, because I think we all had high expectations of the rookie class this year that's come into the NBA, and you faced off, you being the Pacers, just phased off against Con Kneppel, who I think, as to say he's exceeded expectations, Pat, would be a gross understatement for what this young man has done. But to see rookies come into the year, and it's not just, of course, Con, it's also Cooper Flagg and Harper and Derek Queen. You see these guys coming in, and they're young and NBA ready, and they're absolutely making major contributions and impacts to their team. And now the rookie class coming up in the next draft, some people will go as far as saying, and this, of course, is a hot take and remains to be seen, but this could be one of the, if not the best draft class ever, to be in that top 4 or 5. Wow. for Indiana, you could get one heck of an impact player.
No question. It's funny that you bring that up because the Pacers have played, unfortunately, without Cooper Flagg, but they played Dallas on Sunday. Cooper Flagg, of course, they're the number 1 pick. VJ Edgecombe, the number 3 pick. They played on Tuesday against Philadelphia. Con Knippel, the 4 pick, who might end up being Rookie of the Year with Charlotte on Thursday. So they faced a lot of these guys recently, and Harper's great. Queen is great. It's fascinating because you will hear people say, I will never pretend to be a draft expert. I try to follow these kids, especially if the Pacers are looking like they might draft high. I try to follow them when I can throughout the college season, so I have some awareness of who they are, their games, some of their background. But at the end of the day, if I'm turning the TV on a night where, I'm not broadcasting and I'm watching sports, it's still the NBA that pops on the TV. So I can't sit here and tell you if this is the greatest draft class of all time or not. I have no idea, but I have read and I have heard the same things as you have. And one of my initial thoughts of that is, I think it would be great if the top 4 this upcoming draft class is as good as the top 4 from the class that just happened, because I think you've got 4 all-stars in that top 4 right there. I think Edgecombe's going to be an all-star. Harper looks really, really good. And then Flagg and Knippel have been, kind of the flag bearers of that draft class. And as you noted, Queen in New Orleans, while that trade they made might have been foolish, the draft selection that they got out of it to get Derek Queen was certainly a really, really job well done. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of this class. I don't speak for the Pacers front office ever, and I don't speak for them on this trade. I do think that the Zubats trade is fascinating because the way it's laid out, for those who don't know, who might be listening, the Pacers keep their pick if it's top 4, and 5 through 9, it goes to the Clippers. And if they end up 5 through 9, the Clippers get the pick. If it ends up 1 through 4, the Pacers get the pick. And then there's a future 2031 pick that hinges on whether or not that happens. To me, you see the Pacers being willing to make that move. To me, it says they've looked at 5 through 9 and they don't see anybody that is as impactful as Zubats. Now, some of that, if you look at the mock drafts, there are a lot of point guards in that range. I'm not going to break news on your show here to say the Pacers are not looking to draft a point guard, or at least looking to draft a point guard that will start at point guard. I mean, that's just not something that they're trying to do. They've got one that nearly, took them to a championship last year. So I think that's part of it too. I think there's probably a lot of point guards in the 5 through 9 range that allow the Pacers to say, okay, well, if that pick fell 5 to 9 anyway, would you trade the 6th pick and a 2029 pick for Zubats? I'm answering that yes. So I think the Pacers have put themselves in a great spot, because if they don't get draft lottery luck, then they've already cashed that kick in for a borderline all-star center. And if they do get draft lottery luck, then they potentially get one of these top 4 guys in what appears to be a loaded class and get Zubats. It's the have your cake and eat it too scenario. And I will tell you, the fans here are very aware of what's going on. And I think when draft lottery day comes around, this will be as nervous of a city as anywhere in the country or maybe anywhere in the world for one day.
Excited in a nervous way, because to have this kind of rich, deep class of what looks like NBA-ready talent is pretty exciting. And you laid the future out really clearly. And of course, we know the basketball gods are cruel with injuries. Nobody knows that better than Indiana does after last year. But now to have the kind of hopefulness around this class, adding to Tyrese's return, seeing Zubac in a Pacer uniform, wow, does that ever bode well and make next year, the carryover to next year, really, really exciting? I'm talking with Pat Boylan, voice of the Indiana Pacers and the Indiana Fever, here on the Deep Dive on Hoop City with Paul Sir. We had a bunch of trades recently. Boston picked up another European center in Vucevic. Detroit tried to prop up its shooting, one of the weaker areas of what's been an unbelievable season. If you had to pick from the trades in the Eastern Conference, who would you say this year has come out the best and positions them to better their playoff possibilities?
Wow, that's a really good question. I guess I haven't thought of it necessarily from that prism. I'm obviously a little bit, biased to what the Pacers have done. I really think, the move for Zubats, as you were talking about, is the type of deal that the franchise really needed. Turner was a really good center for many years, but Zubats just has some qualities and some capabilities about him that I think are perfect for what this team is looking for and ultimately what it needs in the future. They gave up a lot for it. But if Zubats is the right kind of guy, again, biased broadcaster here, I think it has the potential to be the type of move that the Pacers are in such a fascinating spot because they last year were a win away from a championship. The year before they went to the Eastern Conference Finals, but in the regular seasons of those years, they weren't necessarily viewed as contenders. I think it's the type of move, regardless of what happens with the pick, if Tyrese Halliburton can come back close to 100, that begins to put the Pacers in that category, tier one type of class. You'll have to see it on the floor for that to be to eventually be realized. But I think that's a real possibility. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to speak out of both sides of my mouth here. The move with Cleveland, I think, is one of the more fascinating trades I've seen in a long time because
I agree.
Inherently giving up a 26-year-old All-Star for a 36-year-old All-Star is not exactly the type of move I would be signing up for. But there are some angles where I could see it working. They've been really good with James Harden since he's come over, albeit dealing with a thumb injury right now. And Garland has been injured, and hasn't been available. And they've got a small window. If you force me to pick a side on that one,
and I am forcing you, Pat.
Okay. I will say that I don't like it for Cleveland, but I think it's possible it does work, and I understand why they did it. I really like it for the Clippers. In fact, I think the Clippers had a great deadline because I think they got a good return for Zubats. And I think, turning a 36-year-old into a 26-year-old All-Star, could really bode well for the future, even if Garland doesn't stay there, if they wanted to trade him. So I will not be shocked if this works out well for Cleveland, but I'm not going to pick it to work well necessarily. We'll see how this goes, but they've got a ton of talent there. And, Detroit is, I think, the class of the East, although they'll have to prove it in the playoffs. So I thought that, some of the movement that they made helped shore up, their rotation and added experience for potentially a playoff run, which they're going to need because they remind me of a better record version of the Pacers 2 years ago that came in on a big upswing, but didn't yet have a lot of experience. Now, the Pacers did end up going to the Eastern Conference Finals a couple of years ago, so they were able to push through that. But, do they have that type of experience yet? I don't know. We'll have to see. I thought you asked about the Eastern Conference. I thought Utah's move for Jaren Jackson Jr. is fascinating, too, because I think in a bubble, that's a great move. He's a really talented young player, and they're finally starting to cash in on all these picks. They've also got one or two other, depending what you call Markkanen, centers over there. So they're going to potentially run out 3 7-footers, which will be fascinating, with Walker Kessler getting back from injury there as well. So there were a lot of moves where I was like, I could see this going well, or a lot of moves that if it doesn't go well, you might think, man, they're going to regret that. Obviously, Washington is involved with two of the more high-profile, could go well, could go wrong trades as well. So if I had to pick, one for this year, I don't know necessarily that one jumps out at me, but I do think the Pistons have to continue, to build upon some of that experience. And so I like what they did. And if you're Cleveland, they felt like they had to take a swing, and they took a big old swing. And we'll see how it works out for them here in the next couple of months.
Pat, the Cleveland move, I agree with everything that you laid out there about it. I look at it as a similar move to what the Raptors did when they picked up Kawhi. Very different ages in that, but it's swinging for the fence, taking a chance that this would be the missing ingredient in a talented lineup that failed in the playoffs last year in spite of a sterling regular season record, and saying, even again with the criticism of Harden over the years as a non-primetime player being able to deliver in the most critical moments, which I think is a bit unfair. There's certainly fair aspects to it, but it's a bit unfair and a bit harsh in terms of what Harden's actually done in the playoffs. So it really will be fascinating. I'm curious in Boston with the addition that they made it in the post, that the possibility and the rumblings, and it sounds like for all intents and purposes that Tatum is committed to coming back this year. So there's lots of subplots all around the league. It really was a fascinating trade season and deadline. And in some of the alterations, here's something, and I'm jumping around a bit, but I was last night I watched the Wolves play the Clippers, the no-name Clippers, without Kawhi. And the Clippers have been incredibly competitive since the trade with and without Kawhi. Like they don't go into games usually. I think they've had a couple of lopsided losses, maybe one, but overall they've won some games surprisingly, and they've been highly competitive in all of the other games, including with Minnesota last night. They gave Minnesota everything that they can handle. But the Clippers with Mathurin going over there, some of the young talent they have, so all of the different machinations of the picks you described, those are the kind of things in the NBA right now that I think are really exciting and unique among a lot of franchises. And tell me if there's any merit to this thought. This, to me, the mustard seed for all of these draft picks and trades, as opposed to going out and spending tons of money in signing high-profile free agents or trading for Giannis, this kind of comes from the success of OKC last year and the way that they built their team. And then I have to throw Indiana into that as well, and the way that Indiana has built your team. I think you guys are primarily responsible for changing the landscape on the way franchises look at how to build successful teams.
And I think that's true in large part because of the new CBA. It's a lot harder to compile a team of LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh, or of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, Draymond Green. We're talking about some of those teams that have basically said, we're going to get 3 stars or superstars together. And then even if we put a G League team around them, which I'm not saying either of those teams had that, but that's what we're trying to do. Right. Well, instead, the Pacers have, of course, talent at the top, but I don't think anybody is at least yet calling Tyrese Halliburton first team All-NBA. And Siakam's had a wonderful career. And he's always, it seems like every single year, Siakam's one of the last couple guys to be an All-Star or the first couple guys to be out, which is a great spot to be. But what I'm getting at is they're not LeBron James or Dwayne Wade, but They've made it work with depth. They've shown the importance of depth, and it's harder to hold on to some of these big contract guys. You can only really keep 1 or 2 of them. And the depth aspect then I think becomes a lot more important, which to me is great for the sport. I think it's great to see, a 4 seed, even if it wasn't the 4 seed that I work for, a 4 seed be a win away from a championship, because I think we hit some time there where I think some fans might have said the playoffs were too predictable, and so to get upsets like that and Cinderella teams that you're used to watching happen in March Madness, I have some of that flavor in the NBA. I think was really, really good for the league. So I think unquestionably it's true. I think depth is shown to be important. And look, the Phoenix Suns example failed for more reasons than just trying to assemble 3 stars together. Bradley Beal was never anything resembling one. The fit wasn't good. But I also think part of the reason it failed was because they had absolutely zero depth. I mean, that team beyond those 3, with Durant being the other guy, 4 on down, was one of the worst rosters that I've ever seen. And because they ran out of money, because the new CBA punishes you for going way, way, way into the tax. So then it's interesting. You watch Phoenix, they get rid of, Durant and Beal, and Booker has been, of course, the mainstay there for his whole career. And all of a sudden, Phoenix is having a real nice year, and all of a sudden they're deep, and you're going, okay, this formula works again. So it's a fascinating push-pull for the league, in my opinion, but I like the trend. I like the direction where things are going. Oklahoma City unquestionably had depth. They've also got the stars up top. They're just, well, beyond Shea, the other two are just really young. But I mean, it's amazing, and some of this is just the work that Presti did, in the Paul George trade. And gaining all of those draft picks. I mean, they just got so many guys that they can run in there that are not household names, and then all of a sudden they're capable of being a starting shooting guard for a really good team on any given night. So the Pacers got it done with depth unquestionably. Oklahoma City with young guys that hadn't yet gotten to those big contracts. And then the type of players that Oklahoma City has from like 8 to 15 are just remarkable. And you see it in examples right now where they're dealing with some injuries. No Shea, no Jalen Williams, and yet they're still out there competing as one of the top teams in the league. But I do think for the time being, the days of trying to get three big stars together and then just putting whoever else you can afford onto the floor is not the strategy that teams are going for. And I think that's a good thing for the league.
I'm talking to Pat Boylan, the voice of the Indiana Pacers and the Indiana Fever, here on Hoop City with Paul Sir on our deep dive. Pat, I would be remiss if we didn't touch on the WNBA today, because and these are my words, so I don't want there to be any confusion about where this statement comes from. To me, the negotiations that are going on right now are another unfortunate example of this league not being ready for prime time, not being ready for the gift that they were given 2 years ago when Caitlin Clark arrived in Indiana, when she played NCAA basketball, arrived in Indiana. And of course, I'm a homer, full disclosure, from Iowa, love Caitlin Clark, of course, but she was the goose that was the goose that laid the golden egg that propelled the league forward. And what was exciting for the WNBA was last year, even when Caitlin had to stop playing and wasn't able to complete anything close to a full season, the numbers from the previous years were up, even without Caitlin. And there were a lot of naysayers saying, oh, when she goes, the league's numbers are going to drop in attendance and viewership, and actually both went up. Paige Beckers, Asia Wilson, good things. But now this clumsy, weird negotiation, and I've got other descriptors, but man, oh man, they are flirting. They're flirting at the wrong time with the wrong action. That's my opinion. What's yours?
As it relates to Caitlin Clark first, because I thought you detailed that well. There's two statements that I believe to be inarguably factual, and if you disagree with either of these, then I question not your literally, but anybody who might say these motives. One of them being, if you think, and sometimes you hear this, that the WNBA only exists because of the popularity that Caitlin Clark has brought in. That is factually inaccurate. I got in 2014. The 2015 season was my first year calling games for the Fever. I can't tell you how much this game and this league has grown from 2015 to 2023. And 100%. It continues to get, as you noted, Paige Beckers, Juju Watkins is on her way. There continues to be major star power that's coming into this league that's lifting it. But also, if you can't understand and appreciate the value of Caitlin Clark, in which maybe no sports league has ever seen before, Tiger Woods in golf is the only one I can even think of that's even close. And if you don't understand that Caitlin Clark has not just increased the ratings, but frankly, moved you ahead decades in time, in 2 years, if you don't understand the turbocharge that she has delivered, even the ways I'm describing it are not giving it enough credence, then maybe you don't understand or are a bad faith actor in the other direction too. And both of those things can be true at the same time.
Could I just inject something here real quickly, Pat?
It's your show. You can do whatever you want.
Well, I'm an Iowan, though. You're taught to be polite. So, but the only other pair that were transformational. But here's the difference. Magic and Bird, it's often said, saved the NBA. Very true. But it's different to what Caitlin did, because I think that your descriptor of Tiger Woods and her, the turbocharges the exact. It's like jettisoned the Tiger Woods, the sport of golf. Caitlin Clark jettisoned the WNBA, as you accurately depicted, decades ahead. Magic and Bird stabilized and built from a new foundational level. That's different than Caitlin and her impact. Absolutely. It was like throwing a hand grenade into the league, and it exploded.
No question. Yeah, no question. I mean, look, and also you're going to have no issues talking to me praising Caitlin Clark or Larry Bird. So that's you are barking up the right tree.
I know that.
Listen, I mean, what Caitlin has brought this league is almost immeasurable. I mean, you're talking about TV ratings at times, that are rivaling NBA playoff ratings and, really anything in this country besides the NFL. And even at times, those haven't been wildly off. It's an unbelievable statement to be saying in 2025-26 that a Caitlin Clark WNBA game is on par with the NBA or the MLB, or even in some instances, at times portions of the NFL. It's a saying that you never thought would come out of your mouth. But that also doesn't mean that the league hasn't been growing. It absolutely has, and it's in an unbelievable place because of numerous other players as well. So I will be honest, I have intentionally kept myself away from the conversation in all of this negotiation because, frankly, I'm not smart enough to understand it, and it does me no good to pick sides here. I work for maybe the best ownership group in all of sports in the Simons. They have been dedicated to the WNBA from essentially its inception, when teams were falling left and right off and wanted to sell their teams, and owners wanted to sell their teams. The Simons believed in the WNBA. I don't know if you truth serumed them. I don't know that they would have seen a Caitlin Clark moment coming, but they saw the bigger picture, and there's no ownership group that deserves, and no family that deserves everything that Caitlin Clark has brought, in my opinion, of course, a biased one, more than the Simons. At the same time, you want what's best for the players, and you want both of those things to marry together well to continue for the growth of the league. But I think this is an instance where, once again, Caitlin Clark continues to, say and do everything right. She is on record multiple times saying we need to get this done. This cannot be a cog in a major moment and a major movement. And so, me being the optimist that I am, I continue, until a moment happens where, something significant for the 2026 season is lost. Until that moment, I continue to be optimistic that while maybe this hasn't been the smoothest ride in the world, at the end of the day, if you get all your games, if you start the season when you want to, and you get all your games in as expected, then to me, it's no harm, no foul. I continue to be optimistic they'll get there. I think the players understand the value of the moment. And obviously, I think the owners do as well. And we can't have a work stoppage. And I sincerely hope we will not have a work stoppage. But I continue to be optimistic that they will get there, and hopefully it's something that we're seeing here in the next couple of weeks. The draft is scheduled for the 13th, I believe, of April. So that's an important date on the calendar. Free agency has to happen, and expansion draft has to happen. So you have to have enough time to get all of those things in. But Paul, maybe there's different people that have different thoughts on this. I just continue to be optimistic that this will get done, because I do think at the end of the day, both sides understand the gravity at hand here. But we'll see. I'm simply a bystander on the sidelines, hoping, like everybody else, that we'll get to see WNBA basketball in 2026.
Well, I am hopeful that your optimism is met, because there would be nothing better for the game of not just the WNBA, but women's basketball and the basketball world in general, to get the WNBA back on the court, to get Caitlin Clark back on the court, and continue the growth and development of this, this marvelous sport, really. And as you say, just the quality of play, the quality of players that, similar to the NBA and their youngsters that are coming into the league, the same thing's happening with the WNBA, and the depth is improving. Everything about it is improving. So I share that I share that hope. I don't know that I share the same amount of optimism, but I am optimistic and I am hopeful because there's so much at stake, and both parties have to understand that. And it's important that Pat Boylan's calling the Indiana Fever games when that gets going as well. So
that's way down the list of what is important here, but selfishly, obviously, it's been just an unbelievable experience these last couple of years with Caitlin to get to call her games. And I was fortunate to do the WNBA for many, many years before her. And it's a league that I truly am passionate about. It's a league that I love watching. I mean, the quality in play, you go back and watch 2015 WNBA, and there were great players, Tamika Catchings, the Sparks and the Lynx. Don't get me wrong. There was great basketball, but the depth of it, the difference in the depth of the league is dramatic. And that's going to continue to improve. And the product is going to continue to get better. I mean, I've seen it, significantly over the last decade or so. And now you're starting to talk about these players that are coming in with real staying power, household names. Everybody knows Caitlin Clark, but I think most sports fans know the name Paige Beckers. And I think most sports fans, know Asia Wilson and Brianna Stewart and some of these other players. And so the trend line is in the right direction. And we just, this cannot be the type of thing that halts that momentum. I completely agree with that. And it's what Caitlin Clark has said from day one. She's spot on. She understands it. And this is the epicenter of the growth of the league in Caitlin Clark. So hopefully that all will come to fruition. And I hope the next time I'm talking to you, we're previewing a WNBA season ahead. We'll see.
100%. Pat, thank you so much. You've been extremely generous with your time today. It's such a pleasure always. Enjoy the remaining games in the Indiana Pacer season and the excitement that's continuing to build towards next year for the loyal Pacers fans and faithful, and excited about the potential for the WNBA season and seeing Caitlin and her teammates back on the court for the Fever and the league to get going. Great time for basketball. Thanks so much, Pat, for joining me today.
Of course, Paul, always good to be with you and always good to talk to everybody in your listening audience.
I appreciate that, Pat. Pat Boylan, voice of the Indiana Fever, of the Indiana Pacers, here with Hoop City, with Paul Sir on our deep dive. We'll be right back.